a bottom band that start from tips will usually be used if you already have a foot, like here, or if you wish to later create a foot border, that also is fine. And also when you're making square baskets, which usually don't have a foot, or you just don't want your basket to have a foot rim. In this case we already have a foot, so we'll begin our bottom band from tip, and bottom bands are almost always woven with 3 weavers and a 3-rod wale. For this we're going to need 12 weavers. We have 2 sets and 6 weavers for each set. We start by 3 and then we join butt ends, and that's 6. So each set needs 6 weavers. I'm trying to create a shape that opens up a little bit. Here, since I've added uprights 1 to 1, it's much easier to weave the bottom band. The spaces are already even, everything is much easier. Just want to get the angle right. I want to create something like a bowl here. Now before I weave too much, let's see where we are and if we already need to insert the second band. So we started behind this stake, so that's number 1. 9, 10, 11, 12. That's one group of 12. And the second group of 12 starts here at the 13th. So I'm actually just to the right place now. So now this group waits, and I'm working with the second group, the second set. Now when I get to the beginning, when this weaver exits now, when there's already a weaver, I like to place it in front of it like that, almost like a join. And to me, this creates the finest looking step up, you might say, when you go over the next row. So I like to place it like this. Soon you'll see what it looks like. Okay, one more. Can you see here? This one climbs over this one, and I think if you place them, if you arrange them like this, then the climbing up to the second row looks really good. So now I'm just going to continue with this set until I get to the other set, shaping my stakes as I weave. Since these stakes are pretty short, I've opened up the knot completely, and they're not tied up. They're just loose, and I'm shaping them with the weave. Alright, now I got to the second set. So now this group waits, and I'm working with the second group. Now once again I've got to the stepping up right here. I don't know if you can see that. So I'm placing my new weaver in front of the old one. I like to work very slowly and steadily and make sure that the angle is just right, that the spaces are even, that everything is arranged properly. These two have a tendency to go to the other side, so I'm shaping now as I'm weaving, pushing them downwards and weaving, and now they're going to stay like this. Alright. Also, as you can see, when the weavers become thicker, I prefer to get to the inside and then back to the outside, and this keeps the stakes in position. If I just do like this, it might pull this stake outwards. So I'm going to the inside, holding it, going back to the outside. Beautiful. Now, let's see. Let's go. Keep weaving a little bit. I want to make sure that the joins are directly across, exactly across in the two sets. So we'll check that out soon when we finish weaving this group. Now there's a pretty ugly kink here. It's okay, I guess. I could replace this one since it kinked like that and it doesn't look so good, but then a join doesn't look so good either, right? So the lesser of two evils, I guess. Alright, now let's see exactly where we are. I like to think of the first join as my reference point, so the first join in this set is going to be behind this stake, right? Behind this weaver and behind this stake right here. So that's stake 1, and now we're counting 12. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and in the 13th, right here, it's where we make our first join. So we have to make one more weave. Oh my god, it's so thick. Oh. This weaver is extra thick, but I've made it. So, now we're making our first join. Make sure when you make your joins to leave some length facing towards the inside, because it will make it much easier to trim at the end. Making our first join right here behind this one. Second join. And the third one. Now I'll just continue with this group until I'll get to the next group, and I'll have to join there. Maybe I'll stop for a minute and wrap what I've woven so far. Alright, now I got to the second group. Now I have to join. So these three weavers wait, and I'm joining the second group. Now, why do we work with two groups like that, two sets, rather than working with a single set? Well, since the thickness of the rods is not even, they begin from thin and finish with thick, working with a single set might create a band that is uneven. It has one side of the basket higher and one side lower, one area higher, one area lower, and we want our Waling band to be even in height. So we begin in two places. It could be more sometimes, we'll talk about that in the future, but basically we begin in two places, and this evens out the height of the band perfectly. Now let's just see what we have here. Every now and then you want to stop, look at your basket, and see if the angle is even all around. And I think it looks good here. Maybe this side should be more towards the inside, but it looks good. Now I'm waiting with this group and working with the second group, and I'm just going to finish off with tips, and this gives the finest look when you begin with tips and finish with tips. Now when you finish, you can finish on the outside like that. Trimming like this right here. I'm not going to trim yet because I want to fasten the work before I trim. Or you can finish on the inside. Right. Maybe this one finishes here, and then the next one here, and then this one here, trimming on the inside. I think I'll do this group, finish this group on the inside as well. I think it looks better. Alright. The second type of classic bottom band would be a bottom band that starts from butt ends and creates a foot in the very first row. This is a very special type of band. First because it begins from butt ends, but also because it begins with a 4-rod behind one wale and then turns into a 3-rod wale. So for this, I've kinked my stakes at a distance. This is the distance that seems right to me according to the thickness of my weavers. If it's too much distance, it's okay because we're simply going to be able to hammer it in after we finish the band or the first round. If it's too little, then we're going to have to pull it outwards a little bit, and it's more difficult. So to begin, we're going to take 4 weavers, right? If they have this black coloration at the bottom, let's just cut it off. Something like that. Now I also prefer to, when the weavers are like that together at the butt end, to trim at the tip end so that they will be of the same length. But actually here it's not very important. It's more important when you start from thin ends. So one way to begin is to simply insert your weavers regularly like this. But I think a much better way is to insert them into the base like this. But for this, we actually need to make a nice cut so that they will enter easily. Alright, so we might use our bodkin here. Let's put our first one behind this. I'm going to put the sliped part towards the bottom, right? Now this one will get in between the stakes like this, so it's quite difficult to make. Picked a terrible place to begin. Alright, so this will be the second one, third one, and fourth one will enter here. You can also insert with the slide part facing towards the stave, sideways like that. It also works, as long as it's not facing upwards. So now we're going to kink our weavers like that. One of them broke. No. Alright, let's insert it again. Alright, so we kinked our weavers like that. Let's move these out of the way. And stool. Alright, this is a much better way to begin because you don't have those butt ends facing towards the inside. So we're simply beginning with a forward wale behind one, which means we're going in front of 3 and behind 1 stake. But it's important to make the weave facing towards the bottom side, right? This is why we kinked our stakes like this. We're not going to weave to the side, we're going to weave towards the bottom. So now this one weaves, right? I would prefer to try and fasten the weave here. As you can see, this stake here is clearly kinked too far, but it's okay because we're going to hammer it in when we finish. Maybe I haven't said it at the beginning, but this Waling band needs 20 weavers. I'm going to start one set with 4 and then add 3 tip ends and then add 3 butt ends. So each set is going to have 10 weavers. Alright, now let's see where we started behind this one. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13 would be here. Alright, so I'm beginning now with the second set right here. Now I got to the beginning. This one joins the first weaver here, and this is the point in which we turn it into a 3-rod wale. Simply going to finish the rest. Now this first one is simply going to be trimmed right here, and I'm going to continue with just 3 rods. Alright, now we're continuing with the 3 rods. Alright, before I weave this one, let's continue with this second group, or first group actually, first group that we started. And once again, we got to the beginning of the other set. So one weaver is going to be trimmed here, and we're going to continue with just 3. This is the weaver that got to the first weaver of the other set, and we're simply going to trim it, but let's see if we can kind of fasten the work here. This weaver, it seems, was kinked perhaps a bit too close, or no, actually it's fine. Alright. Right, this is better. Now we'll continue until we get to the tip ends, and I think we're actually going to use the tip joins in this case, because if we don't, then we're going to have more visible joint, and I think this might make it look better. Now you don't have to do it like this. I myself will not always do it like this. But in this case, let's give it a try. See what it looks like. Let's take 3 tip ends and simply make a tip join here. Instead of having this regular join showing, we're going to use this join. It has its downside, right? It doesn't look perfect too, but perhaps it will look better than a regular classic join. I'm introducing the new weaver just like a classic join behind the old one, but I'm working with them together until the old one is used up. And I'm trying to lay those pairs flat and not standing up. Alright, now that the old ones are used up, I'm just continuing with the new, and I'm going to leave these outside. One of them actually finished on the inside. I don't really care about that. Those are tip ends and they're hardly noticeable. Let's trim them. I'm going to use my cutters for this to make a very nice cut here. Alright, now we've got to the other set, so let's wait with this set and once again make these tip joints. If I wouldn't make those tip joints, then I would make sure to join where the weavers, still have some meat on them. They're still quite thick. Otherwise, the regular classic joint doesn't really sit right. So something important to mention. Now I got to the butt ends. I think I'm going to join here because it kind of feels a bit too thick for me now. Don't forget to make sure the overall shape and the angle of the stakes. Now I think I'm going to wrap up my work again, and then I'm going to join butt ends and finish off with tips. Don't be afraid to be a little aggressive with your wrapping iron. This will make the band really nice and tight. And look how beautiful that looks. As you can see, I have this pretty long leftovers here that feels too thick for me. So I prefer to stop here. But then the new weavers that I'm going to introduce, I'm probably going to cut, although they are thinner, I'm probably going to cut like these. So if I have this leftover length, where are my shears, I might cut pretty much the same thing for these new ones, so that here I will have the same thickness where I join. So maybe a little bit less, right? If I have something like this, maybe I'll cut off something like this, because some of it goes towards the inside, but that's just something that I would prefer to do. Alright, now let's trim those ends so that they will not be in the way. Sometimes I will trim them as I work, sometimes I will trim them when I finish the band. In this case they were pretty long, so I prefer to trim now. Another way to finish with tip ends could be to insert them into the previous round like that. Pretty similar to how we do single round Waling bands. First one enters here, second one enters here, but you might want to make a nice cut here to get it to enter like that. And I hope you can see precisely what I'm doing here. very nice finish that holds itself in place. And now we're going to trim like that, trying our best that those ends will not show, like that. Let's see that again. This first one will enter into the weave without breaking, hopefully. Second one will enter here. And the third one, this one's pretty thick, will enter here. Nice. I might even use my pliers to pull on these ends, make a nice finish. Alright. Now to trim, I really try to hide those ends when I trim. They kind of trimmed on the inside like that. Let's just look at the end result here and the foot. Look how beautiful it looks. Maybe we can look at it from the side like that to really see how tall it is. Really beautiful foot. A few more things to say. Could we make the foot with a 5-rod wale? I say yes. Why not, really? I mean, the only difference that it's going to make is that it's going to look different from the inside. It's going to go in front of 2 here. And I think it actually might look better from the inside. So it might look better, and it might be easier to work with. So that's about that. I think next time I'll do it, I'll try to begin with a 5-rod wale, and then we're just simply going to trim 2 of our weavers and continue with 3. Could we start this Waling band from thin and not from thick? I think we could in some situations. Suppose my weavers are very long. I might trim a great deal of the tip ends where I don't want to begin with very thin tip ends. I want to start where I have some meat on the rod. But I simply might begin from thin and then join butts and finish with tips. And if the weavers are very long, this might work fine. Also, if my weavers are quite short, and suppose I'm making a rather large basket and the weavers are short in relation to the basket, I might once again start with more than 2 sets, let's say 3 or 4 sets, in order to get a decent amount, a decent height of a Waling band. So that's another thing to consider sometimes. Middle bands are usually done with 3 weavers, but can also be done with 4 weavers. We'll talk about that in a future lesson. Now let's begin. Let's do it with 3 weavers. Now, these bands start from tip, but do we want to start with the very flimsy tip end, or maybe we want to cut just a little bit off that flimsy tip so the weavers will have some meat on them? And I say don't start with the very flimsy tips. And also it depends on the length of the weavers and the difference between the tip end to the butt end, because if the weavers are quite long and there's a significant difference from butt to tip, here there's not much of a difference. But if the difference is great, then to me it doesn't look good when you have a row of very thin weavers, and then above it very thick weavers all of a sudden. This just doesn't look very good. So when the weavers are longer, I would say maybe cut a little bit more of the tip ends, so that you don't have a very flimsy row and then above it a very thick row. It doesn't look very good, at least to me. So now we're just beginning. 3 weavers behind 3 stakes, and holding them and continuing, and starting a 3-rod wale. This is the first set. We're going to start another set directly across. Let's do that now actually. So start our second group here, starting from tip. Join the first one, weave it, next one, and the last join. Make sure to have some length towards the inside so that it will be easier to trim. Now we have these to trim. Trimming diagonally so that I will not feel it when I put my hand like that. Now let's do some trimming on the inside. Alright. Now let's fasten the work a little bit. And continue with the basket. The top bands will usually be with 4 rods and not 3, because the top bands are more visible from the inside, and a 4-rod wale, a 4-rod behind 2 wale, looks the same from the inside and from the outside. So doing this for the top band means that it will look better from the inside of the basket, which is more visible. In a basket like this, perhaps the middle band is also quite visible, and it might have been a good idea to make it also with a 4-rod wale. But I wanted to show a classic middle band, so I made it in a 3-rod wale. Now we're going to start with 4 rods, and once again I've cut the tip ends so that they will not be the very flimsy tips. 4-rod behind 2 wale. Now this weave has another advantage of being stronger than a 3-rod wale. It makes the whole structure of the basket stronger, and this might be important at the very top of the basket, right? So it also has this advantage. A 4-rod is more material, means more strength, so there's more strength to the upper band and the top of the basket. Now let's see where we should begin the second set. When you're making a behind 2 waling, always grab the 2 that you should go behind, right? Grab them like this as you are weaving, like that, so you won't get confused. Grabbing those 2 while I'm going behind them. So we finished the top band. Now we just have to trim the ends here, and maybe fasten it a little bit, and we can get started on the border. Single round Waling bands start from the butt end, and to this butt end, when we finish, we're going to join the tip end of the next group. So in this case, since this is a top band and the spaces are not too big, or maybe they are too big, I think I want to make the top band with 4 weavers, and that might also make it easier for us to finish and to thread the ends through the beginning. So I'm holding all 4 weavers like that. Maybe push them a little more to the inside, and I'm making a behind 2 4-rod wale. As I'm weaving, I'm trying to shape my basket. In this case, I want to close it down a little bit more. What did I do here? I did a behind 1 4-rod wale. I'm pushing the stakes downwards as I am weaving to create the desired shape. Alright, now before we weave too much, let's see where we are. No, we still have some way to go before we get to the half point. Alright, let's see. I started behind this stake right here, so that's number 1, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So this is at the 13 right here, we have to make our first join. So now, precisely at the half point, we are joining butt ends to the tip ends that we have finished here. So that's 1. There's a bad looking kink here. Can we do something about it? I'm going to replace that one. Alright. Once again, making a join. Not forgetting to shape as I am weaving the band. Oops. Third join right here. And last one. Good. All right. Now, since this is a 4-rod wale, it might be easier to make the finish. So as you can see, the first tip end have joined the butt end right here, and they sit next to each other, side by side. like that. Now the second one will be threaded like this. Hope you can see what I'm doing. And when you thread it like this, it looks like a join. Third one, gently, not to break them. This one broke a little bit. Threading it through like this, gently. All right. After threading the third one, it's easier to arrange the first two joins in position. Now last one. It's a good thing that I've made a behind two forward wale here, because it makes it easier for me to thread. If I made a 3-rod wale here, there would be more risk of a break. What did I do here? I didn't thread it right. All right, right here. Hope you can see how it's threaded, so that it will sit just like a joint, just like what we did on the other side. Now that I've finished this round, I'm going to wrap it down a little bit, and then I'm going to make another single round, and I'm going to show an alternate finish. Alright, so now I've reached the end of the band, right? I joined at the middle and I reached the end, and now I have to thread. But now instead of threading this one first, so that it will sit here like that, I'm going to thread the last one first, this one. And what that will give me is easier time controlling everything that's going on, because as we know, threading that first one into here, or placing that first one here, it doesn't really sit in place nicely, or doesn't always sit nicely in place. And then when we weave the second one, they also don't really sit nicely, those two first ones. They tend to jump and to move. So let's, in this case, start with the last one and thread this one first, right? If we can find it. All right. So I've threaded the last one first. It looks kind of weird. Now, the next one from the right. Don't forget to thread behind two, as this is a behind two forward wale. All right. Now, this one. And finally, this first one. This was the one that was supposed to weave first. Let's see. Move that out of the way. All right. So now essentially we did the exact same thing, but in a different order. And this might make it easier to control everything that's going on, as I said, and it might come in handy sometimes, especially when making a foot with waling during the bass, during the weaving of the bass. This might come in handy. The last type of waling band that I want to talk about in this lesson is a waling band from a single set, right? Usually we make our waling bands from 2 sets. Sometimes it could be more than 2 sets. But sometimes I would also prefer to make a waling band from a single set, just like we do in sarracane or reed. Now, when will I do that? So first, when I use something like that, this is one of the materials that I forge for. I don't know what it's called in English, but as you can see, it's got very long and thin branches, and they are of the same thickness. If you look at the thickness here and the thickness in the other side, it's pretty much the same, or it's exactly the same, I would say. It doesn't have a butt end and a tip end, so with this type of material, it makes more sense to me to use just one single set. And soon we'll talk about how to do it. But also, this is buckthorn. This is a material that I forged for. I really, really love it. Now, it does have a butt end and a tip end, but it's overall pretty thin and long. So with this type of material, I might also prefer to do a band from a single set. Not always, depends on what I'm doing, depends on a lot of things, but just another example, since the material is just really, really thin and long. I might work with it like cane. And this is mastic tree. This is a tree. This is a plant that I really, really love working with. As you can see, these are very, very short branches. It's hard to find long branches of it. It's overall pretty thick and short. So many times when I forge materials like that, I may come back with all sorts of different lengths, but those different lengths might have the same thickness. So this is yet another instance where I might choose to make a band from a single set. So here I've prepared some willow, which is pretty thick at the tip ends as well. And it's all sorts of kind of weird anomalies. So with these, I might actually make a band from a single set. So I've chosen these weavers. Let's first get our basket in here. All right. Now, first, when we talk about working with a single set, how will I begin my work? Let's do, since the stakes are really spaced here, I think I'm going to make to work with 3 rods and not with 4 rods. It's going to be weird with these huge spaces in between. So usually when I work with kind of different lengths like this, I will choose 3 different lengths for the beginning. I will start with the short one. Start like this, and I will kind of alternate tips and butt ends. If I have a tip that's really thin, I'm going to insert a little more to the inside, like that. So here I started with 2 tip ends and one butt end. If I work with 4 weavers, I will begin with 2 tip ends and 2 butt ends. Yeah, and then I just begin like this. Now, obviously, those butt ends here on the inside might not look very good, but on many of the materials that I forge, I can't really kink my materials, so sticking it into the weave is not a good option. But actually, let's show how to do it. But with willow, I might kind of stick the ends here, and then I will not have the butt end shown in the inside, right? So I might actually do it with the tip ends as well, as these tip ends are not very thin. So now I've begun with one butt end and two tip ends, and I've also hidden the beginning, and I'm just going to begin like this. But in forged materials which cannot kink, I obviously will just begin in the inside. So usually when I do a band with a single set, I will also prefer to have the joins on the inside, because having joins kind of in an unorderly fashion, just kind of scattered all around, it's something that I don't really want to see on my basket. So I will just have the joins on the inside, and it will look perfect from the outside. You don't have to do it. I will not always do it also. Sometimes I will prefer the strength of the classic join. But yeah, this is how I do it. Now, when I use willow, I can also make a more sophisticated join that's kind of kinked and shoved into the weave, and it's invisible. But the only reason that I'm showing this is because I'm demonstrating how I would work with forged materials. I don't think I will ever do a kind of a single set Waling band with willow. I might do it if the weavers are very fine. I might work like this, but it's really rare. And since we've alternated sides, and since the weavers are pretty even in thickness from butt to tip, the entire Waling band seems to be of the same thickness. Now this one I might trim here on the inside. Those joints on the inside don't look very good, but yes, sometimes I would prefer that the outside of my basket will look perfect and the inside will not look perfect. Other times I will use the classic join, as I said. It depends on what I'm doing. Alright, now this one's clearly finished. Let's just kind of pull it towards here and trim it so that it will jump towards the inside, and replace it with another tip end. I'm not working with the very thin tips. I'm inserting it so that the whole thing will seem even in thickness. I might also use the tip joins sometimes in this type of bands, joining the two tips like this and working with them together. Here I'm not going to do it. Let's just pull it towards the inside. Make the join here on the inside. Another thing that's a possibility here is to use the step up when you're climbing up to the second round. I didn't do it here, but since we're beginning with thick ends, or some of the ends that we begin with are thick, using the step up might make it look good. Usually I don't use it because then you have to use it every time you finish a round. But I just want to mention it, that this might be a good chance to give it a try. Here I've actually joined a butt end to a tip end. I don't really care. I mean, as long as the whole band looks even, it's fine. Now I can try to kind of manipulate the joints so that I will finish with tip ends, or the thinner ends. And if not, then I'm going to show you how to finish. Alright, let's see where we are. This is where we climbed to the second row. You can see the anomaly here. Now since this is already a tip end, I might actually finish here. So I will just finish them on the inside, one after the other, like that. The last one doesn't enter, so maybe I'll begin from here. One finishes here, then here and here, and it will look like this. And this is how I would finish such a Waling band. I can also, in case of Willow, I can also kind of kink those ends and shove them towards the weave. Yeah, but once again, the only reason that I'm showing it is to demonstrate what I would do with forged materials that many times can't kink.